Okay, thanks for attending this workshop. We will wait for a few more minutes for more people to join. Okay, let's play some music. Uh, okay, before we start, thanks everyone signing up for this workshop series, which is brought to you by a developer student club at SUTD, Digital Design and Development Club, or 3DC for short. This workshop series has three main topics: Git, JavaScript, and Firebase. All of them are somewhat connected to each other. It would be great if you decided to attend all of them in the coming weeks, but it's totally fine if you just want to attend a specific topic only. So in terms of this Git workshop, we have two sessions. Today is the first. We'll be introducing Git to you and treat you as a complete beginner. Today we are focusing on how to use Git on your local machine, and the second session is in the next week. We'll focus more on how to use Git with GitHub and how to do collaborations with your teammates. We'll also let you set up a simple website using GitHub pages, which will be used by the subsequent JavaScript workshop. So in that JavaScript workshop, we'll teach you how to make your website more dynamic. So maybe I want to ask, what's the audience right now? What's your experience with Git? You can answer my question in the chat if you don't, in the Twitch chat. If you don't have any experience, you can type 0. If you have some basic usage experience, you can type 1. If you are advanced user, you may have came to the wrong place. But if you don't have any experience, no worries. This is exactly where we will start. Okay, thanks for the responses. Okay, maybe let me introduce myself briefly first. I'm Mark Huang, a year 2 undergraduate at SUTD pursuing ISTD, aka a computer science degree. I'm currently doing internship at SAP. I use Git on my daily work and on my personal projects, but I'm not actually an advanced Git user as well. So if you find anything I'm incorrect, inaccurate during this workshop, please feel free to point out. And if you have any questions during this workshop, you are welcome to ask those questions through 2 main channels. One is the Pigeonhole link that we set up in the link is in the repository README document. You can click this link and enter your questions anonymously in the Pigeonhole. There's another channel where if you have very specific questions or you encounter some errors that you couldn't solve, you can message our TA's teams directly through Telegram. So these are the Telegram handles. So today's workshop will be, if you haven't seen this GitHub page yet, you can just search for 3DC DSC on GitHub and search for this repository called Intro to Git Workshop. So this repository contains all the resources we have for this workshop. And during this workshop, you don't necessarily need to take notes because our lecture material is actually all here, and all the notes and all the commands that we will demo is all here. But the purpose of this workshop is really to be a very practical workshop instead of a very dry theoretical workshop, so that you can actually, hopefully you can follow me and do it on your own computer. And the objective of all of us is trying to introduce you with the basic Git commands, and you can use it right after finishing this workshop 2-session series. So today is the first Git workshop. We call it Git locally, and you can access today's content lesson material here. Maybe at first I will also shout out to the contributors of this workshop. There are 3 of us: Jason, Sham, and me, Mark Huang. Okay, so let's start. So I think most of you who have registered to this workshop have received email let you install Git on your machine before attending this session, but I still want to go through the Git installation process very quickly. This is just to get everyone on the same page. So if you are a Windows user, you go ahead and click into this document and click Git Bash for Windows. This will lead you to the download page. You just download the 64-bit for Windows setup and follow the instructions from there. For Mac OS user, you can use your terminal window to use Git version. This will prompt you to install the Git as well. For Linux user, I believe you know what you are doing. And the key thing that I want to mention is the Git configuration. If you have never done this before, it's actually quite necessary for Git to know who you are. So by using these two commands, you are basically telling Git your credentials, your name and email. And if you happen to already have a GitHub account, just try to keep the same email locally and remotely. So whatever email you used to register GitHub, you tell Git the same email as well. So here is the example for setting up your name and email. Once you have set it up, we can start on today's content. I will give you half a minute to do so. Yeah, in the meantime, you can open up your terminal window. No matter it's okay for Windows, it is after you have installed the Git Bash, you can go search bar and search for Git Bash. That will open your Bash terminal. For Mac OS user, you can just go to Spotlight and search terminal and click this icon. So today's workshop content will be mainly down in the terminal window. We'll teach some basic shell commands, but in the end, we'll also mention some GUI tools. In the email setup, is it okay if I use GitHub anonymous email instead? This one, I'm actually not sure, but what you can do is you try to use the anonymous email first. Then I believe if you know how to push your commit to GitHub, you can try if the GitHub recognize your user. If it recognizes, I guess it is working. Git bash and git command for Windows, I believe, is the same. Okay, I believe most of you have set up the either Git bash or Mac OS terminal. So let's start from today's content. I'm actually not sure how long go through this content will take. If we finish too soon, we can answer more questions, and you all can just ask any questions related or not related to Git. So first, what is Git? To understand what is Git, Git is distributed version control software, and it's a way to control versions of your projects. And the projects we are talking about is primarily software engineering projects. So being distributed, meaning that every developer working with a Git repository has a copy of their entire repository, and this is in contrast to a centralized version control system. If you don't understand what is a centralized version control system, never mind. Just in case there are someone who have used other centralized version control software before, Git is a distributed, is quite different from a centralized version. So people often heard about GitHub and don't really know what Git is. So at the first, we want to distinguish what's the difference between Git and GitHub. So Git is just a piece of software that lives inside your computer. It doesn't usually have a graphical interface where you can interact and see it, but it's just a command line tool working behind the scene to make sure your versions to control your versions on your projects. Well, GitHub is completely different from Git. GitHub is just online hosting service for your Git repositories. For the long version, what's the difference, you can read afterwards. So why should you learn Git? I think Git is really essential for software development. If you haven't gone through any software engineering internship or full-time jobs, you would like to learn Git as soon as possible. Because at the real workspace, people will automatically expect you to know how to use Git and GitHub, and basically it's essential for software development, essential for every programmer to learn. But if you are not going to be actually a software engineer, but related fields that require coding, Git is also very helpful for your personal projects or school projects. And it's also to avoid this issue where you need to make copies of your project document in case it loses, and once you update a version, you always update the name to call it final version. So this is really a not elegant solution. So Git is actually helping you do all the version controls and even collaborations with a group of people. So before we start learn any Git commands, I want just to get you started on using terminal or shell. So shell is pretty useful in terms of especially when you're working as a software engineer, but also even at your own computer, it makes things much faster to do some simple things. It's all about efficiency on how to get things done. So if you can open your terminal or shell or bash, git bash on Windows or Mac OS. So here is my terminal. I will just introduce you a few very simple commands that you can use in your terminal. Once you open your terminal, you can use actually the last command here, pwd. Pwd stands for print working directory or present working directory. Some people think it's print, some people think it's present. You just type pwd and hit enter. It will show you where you are right now. So you are actually browsing using, maybe you'll get used to using a Windows File Explorer or Mac OS Finder to look for your files. But the key point of using a shell is to know how to navigate your file systems. So whenever you are in a shell, you are located somewhere in the file system, and this is where you are. So I'm actually located at the home directory, mark directory. This is actually my home directory for my current user, which is called mark. So the first command I will teach you is ls, stands for list. This will just list all the files in the current directory. There's some flags you can use in combination with list. For example, okay, some of these commands are usually Linux systems commands, but the Windows Git bash already integrated the most common used Linux command into the Git bash. So you can use most of the Linux commands, but in case there are certain commands that is not working for Windows user, don't worry about it. You just need to know those basic commands that will work on Windows. So if you want to, in this current directory, actually there are some hidden files that is not shown. If you want to show all the files, you can use a flag. This is a small dash or a minus sign, then A means all. You can see all the files that start with a dot. These dots are all the files start with the dot is a default hidden file. So previously when you use list, you only see like a dozen of files. Then if you list all the files, including the hidden files, you'll see all the more dozens of files. So if you use ls minus la, this will list down all the details of the files. including the permissions, owners, owner group, and last modified time, and as a list form. So the next command is to change directory. This is how you navigate between directories. So now in the current directory, I have a folder called documents, and I want to get into document this folder. So I use CD, stands for change directory, and documents. So if you type doc, you can use your tab key on your keyboard to autocomplete this command. If you CD into your document, you get into the document. You can print working directory again. You are now in home marked documents. If you want to go back to previous folder, you can use cd ..doc. You are now get back to your home folder. So for other commands, I will cover with the following content. Now, let's start creating your first Git repository. So there are a few cases where you want to use Git. One scenario is that you want to start a fresh project locally. Let's say you want to build an application from start, or you want to Git can also use to track versions of text files. Even you are doing some writing or taking notes using Markdown or text file, you can also use Git to start a repository to track your progress on your writings. And another scenario is that you want to make an existing local project into a Git repository. But both of these scenarios, you are dealing with Git locally. So git init is the command that you would use to initiate a Git repository. So let's just use the navigation commands we just learned. We go to places where you want to save your Git repository. In my case, I will just go to documents, and I have a folder called code. In this code folder, I have a few Git repository inside, but we want to create a Git repository from fresh, so we just call git init. No, we need to create a folder first. So we use this command called mkdir, make directory. So make directory, I will call a new directory called my demo project. So if you use list again, or list all, you'll see a new folder has been created called my demo project. So I'll just use cd to navigate into my demo project. So as you can see, this if I just use list, it doesn't show me any file. This is the empty folder. Now I want to use git init to transform this normal folder into a Git repository. I will just call git init. You'll see something like this. Initialize empty Git repository in the current file location. So now, if you use ls flag la, you'll see there's a new folder called .git. This is actually the only difference between a Git repository and a normal folder. So this hidden folder, if you just use list, you won't see it. If you use, you can only see it using the LA flag. So this Git folder, hidden folder, is actually where all the magic happens. It tracks all the versions and some metadata about current Git user and all the commit histories. So next step, we want to check the status of your Git repository, and you can use a command called git status. And because we don't have anything in this Git, so you'll see this is on branch master, no commit yet, nothing to commit. So if this doesn't make sense to you, it's okay. We'll soon you will know what does those status tell you. So now we want to add some files in our Git repository. And we want to use a new Linux command called touch. Touch is a Linux command that does nothing more than just creating an empty file. And you just pass a file name that you want to create after touch. So in this case, I will just create a file called hello_1.txt. hello_1.txt. This will create the first file. I'll go ahead and create a few more files. So right now, I have created 3 files. If I use ls, supposedly, yeah, as expected, I shall see 3 files. Now let's run git status again and see what's happening now. So now it says I have 3 highlighted files. It's under untracked files, and it's hello1.txt, hello2.txt, hello3.txt. So what does it mean by untracked files? So even though you have converted this repository as a Git repository, it does not track everything. You must explicitly tell Git what are the files you want to track. So in order to do that, we use a git add command. It's a way to tell Git what are the files you want to track. So let's say I want to let Git track hello_1.txt file. So I will just use git add hello_1.txt. hello_1.txt. I'll make my font bigger so it's easier to see. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, I have made my terminal bigger. Okay, just now I have added the hello_1.txt into my Git repository, and let's check the Git status. So now the hello_1.txt has been moved under changes to be committed. So what are these areas? This area is called the staging area. So if you look at the notes, and in the staging area, we have a working directory. Working directory is the file system on your local computer. If you open your file explorer or using the finder, what you are looking at is your local working directory. But the Git repository is a hidden, is kind of living inside your folders. It's not straightforwardly can be seen. So in order for Git add files into the repository, you must add the file into the staging area first. So the purpose of doing that is for you to decide what are the files you want to be committed into repository. And sometimes you want to just commit one file, sometimes you want to commit a bunch of files, or even you want to break your changes into sections that you can commit different sections at different times. So in terms of git add, we have a few other options that you can use. Just now I just used git add and trying to add hello_1.txt, this specific file. And since you may have changed a bunch of files in your local system, you can add all of them at once using the dot. Dot represents the current directory, and it basically adds all the files under the current directory into your staging area. And let's do that, and we'll call the git status again. You'll see all the files has been moved into staging area. So you can also use a command called git add --all. But in any case, if you accidentally staged one file, you can use this git remove cached command to unstage it. So use git remove cached. Then you can use hello 2. This is removing hello_2 out of the staging area. But if you want to remove all the files from staging area, you can use git reset. Now, all the files has been moved out of the staging area. So after you have moved into, let's just add them again. Git add dot git status. After you have moved the file into stage the file, the next step is to actually commit the files into your Git repository. And the simple command is just git commit. So before you do that, what you should understand is, in this when you use git commit, you are not committing a specific file. So in this case, you are not like committing hello at 1, but rather you are committing all the files in the staging area. And if you just call it by git commit, it will actually bring you to a text editor that has a high chance opening Vim for you. But if you don't know how to use Vim, it's recommended to use a M flag. M stands for message, so you can just write the one-line commit message inside along with the git commit. So in this case, I will just say some descriptive commit message that describe what have you changed, why do you want to make this commit, and what have you changed. So in this case, I will just say add hello files. So if I do this and I hit enter, these 3 files will be officially committed into my Git repository. Now if I use git status, it will say nothing to commit, work tree is clean. So maybe you have noticed here, I used add hello files as present tense. This is a common convention among software engineer and software developers, that we use the present tense instead of past tense in the commit message. So instead of saying I have added 3 hello files, we usually just say add hello files. This is good because when in the later stage, when we want to revert the commit, we can say something like revert add hello files instead of revert added hello files. So, but this is not necessary, but it's just a common convention in the industry. But I also just want to show you what happens if you don't use the M flag. If you don't use the M flag, let's touch a new file, file.md. I will just use the command that we learned just now, file.md git add. Then we'll just call git commit So yeah, it actually opens up my nano editor. So this is where you need to put in your commit message. So I just type here add file.md, and this is a nano editor. You can exit by using your Control X, then press Y for yes, press enter to confirm. So now your new file has already been committed. But if the editor opens up as a Vim editor where it doesn't look like the nano editor I just created, I just opened, you can use :WQ to quit the editor. So another useful command to combine the add command and commit command is the -am flag. So you might think if you don't have the if you don't have a reason to like add files individually to your staging area and then commit it, you can combine these two steps together. Let's say we create another file called touch hello-5. So now you can use git commit AM. A stands for all, M stands for message. Then you go ahead to type in your message. It tells you nothing added to commit, but untracked files present. And this is because this -am command only automatically stages the files that you have already been tracked. So for those files you have made a modification or you have deleted, those can be staged automatically using the -am flag. So I'll just do a demo. I use nano editor. Nano is editor. I will try to edit the hello_1 file. I'll just put in some random text here. So now if I run git status, I have one modified file. I have one untracked file. Now I want to use this command, git commit am my message. Only one file has been staged and commit. If you run git status, the newly added file, which has never been tracked, is still under untracked files. And this is expected behavior by this flag. But if you want to add all the files, let's say you have created a lot of new files, and you basically want to add them all at once, you just use git add .all git add all flag. Both this method will add all the files into staging area. So now all these three never tracked file has also been moved into the staging area. So let me commit it first. So just now we have made a couple of commits, and actually each commit is a snapshot of your project. It's kind of like a keyframe in your animation. And as you might expect it, that once you have made the commit, you can go back to your previous commit whenever you want. So you never lose track of your work progress. And actually the implementation of Git is very efficient. So it's okay to have as many commit as you want. You can, even though it's just a small changes, But if it is a key changes, it's very good practice to commit on every key changes you make. So it's better for in the future to debug your program. So now you have made a series of commits. You want to check your commit history. There's a command to check your commit history. It's called git log. If you just run this, it will show your commit history as a linear full detail page. So at this page, we can also see a few data that is stored by Git. Of course, it's the author, the user who used Git. This should reflect your user configuration as your name and your email address, and the date which you made that commit, the exact timestamp of which you made that commit. And as you can see, this has a string, a long string, and this is called the hash of that commit. So Git use hash string to actually compress your Git your text files. So this is unique. It's kind of a unique ID of your Git of your files, of your every commit you make. So if you want to, later I will talk more about how do you check out of one of these commits or how to revert to one of these commits. But basically, this is a structure of how Git store your files, and this obviously shows your commit message. And here you can see a head and a master. Master is a default branch that you are working on, and we'll talk more about what is a branch and how to do branching in the later sections. And the head is actually where are you right now, and it shows me my current working directory is at the latest commit on the master branch. So basically that's what it means. To quit from this screen, you just hit Q on your keyboard, Q to quit. So there are a few more flags or options you can use together with git logs. One common option is git log one line. This is used when you have too many commits and you want to quickly view all of them. So I want to take an existing folder for example. Let me just cd into this intro to GitHub, intro to Git workshop. If I use git log, you'll see a very long list of commits, and this might be too much of what you want to see. So instead of doing just git log, I will use git log -- one line. This will show one commit per line, and together with a simplified hash string and your commit message. So in this way, you can easily see your history of commit and quickly find the commit you want to check out. So in many cases, you might have seen the Git graph where it's shown represented by dots in a line. And let's try use a graph flag to generate a simplified Git graph for you to take a reference to. So once you use the -- graph flag, you will see something like this. It's a very simplified graph, but it somehow shows you different branch and how do they where are they being created and how are they being merged into together. So this is just an example of the Git graph. So let me see if you all have any questions at this point. Any text editor recommendations? I don't have any recommendations. I think most of the editors works very well. I personally use Atom or Vim. Is there a difference for GitHub student packsing? We'll answer that later. PWD is not recognized as a internal or external command. Maybe this PWD is not supported in your shell. Will the session be recorded? Yes, this session will be recorded. What are the pros and cons of using GitHub versus OneDrive and Google Drive? Okay, this is actually a legit question. What's the difference of using GitHub versus OneDrive or Google Drive? Firstly, please don't upload your Git repositories onto Google Drive, OneDrive, and Dropbox, because the synchronization system on those normal file hosting servers will actually break your Git repository. So it's not that straightforward to host your Git repository on a normal file hosting service like Google Drive or Dropbox. So just to avoid any unexpected error, don't upload your Git repository onto Google Drive. Don't host it there. Instead of that, GitHub is pretty good at hosting your Git repositories, but also enables you a lot more features around Git, so you can use them as well. And basically, you can't get away with GitHub when you do collaborations with your teammates. I hope that answers your question. Okay. So before I introduce more commands of Git, I'll just tell you the most useful command which is git help. So as a beginner to Git, you might be intimidated by the documentations. You might start by searching Git on Google and shoot, I accidentally closed that window. Intro to Git. You might try to search Git on Google and leads you to the Git documentations. And when you start to look up the references, you get intimidated because there are so many different commands and you don't know where to start. And that's exactly how I feel when I started to search Git on Google. But the reality is, as long as you know the common commands, it's not difficult to memorize, and it just comes naturally on your day-to-day work. And whenever you're not sure about the specific commands or a fancy command that you are not very sure what's the expected behavior, you can always use a command called git help. So if you don't know how to use git log, you can just use git help log. This will show the documentations right inside your shell, so you can check what are the flags and options you can use along with git log, and it has actually a quite accurate description of what each option can do. Yep. So just now we can see okay, git log can be quite customizable, and later in in the end of the workshop, I will show more about git log. Yeah, the git one line is what we just used. This is a shorthand for using pretty one line abbreviate commits used together. Okay, let's continue. Git commit, git log. Okay. Now let's talk about Git, how to remove files from the Git repository. This is actually quite some people might be confused. So why do I need a command to remove files from Git repository? Why can't I just remove a file? You are totally right. Let's start with removing a file first. So let me go back to my demo project. If I list all the files in my file system, I will see there are hello1235 and new.md. The command in Linux to remove file is just rm for remove, followed by the file names you want to remove. In this case, I want to remove the hello-5 file. I can use this command to remove this file, and this command is equivalent to when you use a graphical file explorer and when you drag the file into your trash bin. This is doing exactly that. So if I remove hello-5.txt and hit enter, this file actually just been deleted. But is the file has been deleted from my Git repository? Not yet, because when you run git status, you'll see this change of deleting hasn't been committed yet. It's not even been staged. So if you want to make the real change to your Git repository, you have to do the staging and committing as well, even for deleted files. So if I want to do that, I can just use git add the deleted file, which is hello-5.txt. This will stage this deleting behavior, and when I run git status again, this delete behavior will be staged and moved into the staging area. Now if I make another commit and I say a message, say removing, or no, I should use present tense, remove hello-5.txt. This will actually make the deleting behavior in your Git repository. So now status, if you list your file, your hello-5.txt file is no longer existing in your working directory nor in your Git repository. So instead of doing that, instead of doing git remove and git add then git commit, you can use git remove in combination. It's a combination of remove and git add. So this time I want to remove the file.md. This time I'm using git remove, not just remove. So when I do this behavior is already staged, automatically staged. So if I check git status, it's already staged. So at this point, I just need to commit. Delete file.md. What you can also do with git remove is to remove a directory. So I'll just quickly demo that. Since I don't have a subdirectory, I will create one. Make directory testing cd testing, create a new file, create another file, create a third file, and I actually want to commit all of them first. So I use git add all and git commit message demo and check its status. Okay, now I want to remove this testing repository and all the files under this testing repository from my Git repository. I will do something like git remove testing, but don't forget to add this R flag. R stands for recursively. So once you're using R flag or recursive flag, you're telling the system to do this action recursively for the subdirectory of that directory you have specified. So basically it's saying that please remove all the files under testing folder. So now I can just make the commit. Remove folder. Okay. Actually, I want to give you more context on why do you need this kind of why do you need to exclude some okay, it's actually the next section. We're using a git ignore file to tell Git to ignore certain files or folders. And why do we want to do that? So if you are familiar with, let's just take Python for example. If you use Python to develop program, you will usually use virtual environment for Python. If you don't know what that is, it doesn't matter. Basically, after you have created a virtual environment for that project, you will have a folder called venv, stands for virtual environment. Let's just create that venv manually. I'll just make a directory, venv. So this is a virtual environment folder for your project, but you actually don't want to include this virtual environment inside your Git repository for many reasons. First, it has include a lot of subfolders and subfiles inside the venv, and it's just not it's not part of your project. It's not necessary to include. It's not your source code, so it's not necessary to include those in your project in the GitHub. Secondly, every person will have to create their own virtual environment in their own local machine. So it really has no point to share your virtual environment. So in such cases, you want to exclude the venv being tracked. So one thing you can do, you can just never stage it, never move it into the staging area. So you will never be committed to your Git repository. But instead of doing that, let's create a file. Dummy. Instead of doing, so once you have a file or folder that you don't want to include it in your Git repository, it will always show under your untracked files. And sometimes you just want to get rid of that. So a way for Git to basically ignore some certain files is using a git ignore file. So I'll create, another scenario I can give you is that sometimes you can store your credentials on a file that is being referenced by your program. So I can touch another file called credentials. So inside the credentials.txt, you might store your username and password, and you never want to share this password, never want to upload it into any cloud hosting service, and you also don't want to share it with your teammates. So now my objective is just to exclude my credential.txt and my virtual environment. Both of them are currently under untracked files, and I will use a new file to ignore it. So I will use touch.gitignore, and now I want to basically add a line in your this gitignore file. You can use any text editor to edit this file, but in this case I will just use echo credentials.txt. Basically, these commands just allow me to append this line into my gitignore file. So let's use cat. Cat is just a way to display the content of that file. I'll use gitignore. It shows correctly as expected. Now I need to include another line. I use echo venv. cat.gitignore. Now it has, oh, I made a typo. It's okay, I will just, okay, this time I'll use nano editor to edit this file. venv. Now, since I have created the gitignore file, these two files are disappeared from my untracked files. Now I only need to commit my gitignore file. I will say I'll use a shorthand command, which no, I can't use the shorthand command because it's a newly created file. So I will just add this, add all, and git commit. I'll add a message called add git ignore. Now it shows, if I run git status, it shows nothing to commit. Working tree is clean. And when I use the list la command, it will show my credential.txt and venv folder still exist in my file system. It still exists in my working directory, but it's not actually within my Git repository. How do I verify that? I can use this command, git list tree recursively master branch. So this will show all the files that is currently being tracked by Git repository. And as you can see, as expected, credential.txt and venv folder is not being tracked by the Git repository. So now I have another scenario where hello1, hello2, hello3 are being tracked. hhh.txt is also being tracked. new.md is also being tracked. Now I want to remove all those txt files from my Git repository, but not remove them from my working directory. If we use the previous command that we learned just now, git remove, it will actually remove the files from both my file directory and the Git repository. That's obviously not something we want. So we will try to use the git ignore to achieve that. So this time I'll use vim to modify the git ignore file. So inside oops, I didn't set up Vim configuration on this machine. Okay. DMV. Just use none of them. Okay. So now, as I said, I want to exclude all the txt files from the Git repository, and I will try to do a pattern matching like this. This asterisk means any. How to ignore an already tracked file, and I will use asterisk.txt. So asterisk means any files. That means I want to ignore any file that has an extension of .txt. I'll just quit and git commit am update dot git ignore. So now I have updated my git ignore. I can check that by using git ignore. The asterisk.txt is there, but let's check whether my txt file is being removed from the Git repository. Git ls tree recursively master. No. hello1.txt, hello2.txt, hello3.txt, hhh.txt is still within the Git repository, and that's because it's already been tracked, and git ignore can only take effect for those files has not been tracked yet. But we have a way to work around this, which is using the remove cached command and restage all the necessary files again. So at this point of time, I'll just use git remove recursively cached. This is basically removing all the files and followed by a dot, removing all the files from my git cache. Then what I want to do again is to just git add dot. Now we run the git status. You'll see this any .txt file has been flagged as deleted. So I want to commit this. Remove any txt file. Once that's committed, if I run the checking git repository file again, is git ls tree you'll see the only files left in my Git repository is my .gitignore and new.md, which is not the txt file. But I can also use ls. I just check all the files in my working directory. All the files being ignored by Git are still under my working directory. Let me see if there's any questions at this point of time. If I accidentally close the shell, what happens to the changes in the working directory? Working directory usually means that's the file systems in your local machine. So if you close the shell, it doesn't do anything to the files on your machine. Just like if you close your file explorer, it doesn't delete your files as well. And if you are referring to the Git repository, if you just close the shell, the Git repository will still be there because of the existence of this .git hidden folder. This hidden folder will forever live inside your normal folder, and it just keep track of all the files, the versions of files for this particular folder. Lesson will be recorded and it will be accessible on Twitch itself. So once you can get back to Twitch, the video will be available for 14 days. Can we create a few Git folder in your demo project folder? Yes, actually you can create nested Git folders. But I'm not sure if there is any error or implications of that. But I believe you can create nested Git folders. But it's just normally we don't have a reason to do that. What Linux distro are you using? I'm just using an Ubuntu 18 version. Any text editor recommendation? I'm sorry. Is there any difference for the GitHub student? Okay. Okay. Okay, next up will be C branching in Git. Okay, someone can't create Vim, is it? Okay. So if you use Vim if it automatically opens Vim for you, or you use Vim to edit any files, you can use vi or vim hello1.txt. Oh, okay, just Vim then. hello1.txt. Okay, in this case, if you just want to quit, you need to type colon first. You need to type exit first, esc. You exit any mode first. Then you type colon q and exclamation mark. So this will force quit the current file. If you have edited a commit message, like for example this is my commit message. If you do that and you want to make this commit and let it pass through, you can use escape key first, escape, then colon, W for write, or just save the file and WQ, save and quit, and hit enter. So this will actually make change to the file. Okay, let's move on to Git branching. So oftentimes you will see people talking about Git using a graph like this. Actually, this is not hard to understand at all. Most of the time you understand people talking about, oh, how do you have a primary branch? It's like a primary route, then you can have sub-route, sub-branch, then later you merge it together. So this is actually very easy to understand, but you need to understand it in a way that how does these dots and commits affect your committing, branching, and merging behavior. So it actually serves as a visualization in your head on how to use the commands. So in this case, okay, at first, why do we need to make branches? So for example, if you are the only person who are working on the project, you are writing your own software, doing your own software development, you don't have anyone to work with, you still have chances that you will need branch to in your project. It's something like making copies of your final essay. Oftentimes when you start to making a draft of your final essay, you create a draft first, then after you have created your first draft, you don't want to lose your original draft, but rather you create a duplicate of your draft and make modifications from there. And that's exactly why you need something like branch. Branch is basically making copies. In making copies for you to experiment new features on the new branch without losing your original main work. So branching is useful for yourself to experiment new features and new modifications, but it's even more useful for different people working together on the same project to collaborate on the same project, but each of the person in charge of different feature, and they can work on different projects so they don't accidentally modify each other's progress, don't accidentally delete each other's progress, but also just making changes on their own copy. Then after they have done their own changes and their new features, they will need to merge all the different branches together to the primary branch, which is we usually call the master branch. So there's no magic behind this branching and merging. It's basically just making copies and combine copies. And of course, you might think, how do I combine copies once I have made different copies and made different changes on each branch? So Git is somewhat smart, but it's not completely automatic. Git is smart enough to figure out what are the lines has not been changed, what are the lines are newly added, what are the lines are modified. But if in different branches, in two branches, both branches has modified the same line, there's no magic solution to automatically merge the two different changes together. So before you actually can merge two branch, you need to manually check what's the two version of that modification of that particular line, and you make the choice on which version you want to keep. Only after you have resolved the conflict of modification, then you can merge different versions together. So what Git actually helps you is to help you to manage different versions, switching between different branches, switching between different commits you want to check, or branches you want to make changes on, and just help you automate the part where can be merged, and at the end you still need to review those portions where it has conflicts, merge conflicts. So let's just go through that part let's start with creating a new branch. So before you create a branch, you usually want to make your commit tree clean, which means that you shouldn't have any files in staging or files unchecked. You want everything committed nicely. So in this case, I have a modified file. I want just to commit that. So now my working directory is clean, my Git repository is clean. I'm ready to create a new branch. The way to check my existing branch is just use git branch, and it will show me I have only one branch called master. If I want to create a new branch, let's say feature branch, I will just give the new branch name following the git branch command. So by executing this line, I have already created git features. I can check again, git branch. I will see a master branch and a feature branch, and the asterisk indicates that I'm actually still on the master branch. So I want to switch myself from master branch to feature branch. The way to do that is to use a new command called checkout feature branch. So hit enter. Now it will show me I have actually switched to branch feature. In this new feature branch, let's see all the files. It's a complete duplication of my master branch. Let's say if I make some modifications, I'll create a new file called new feature.python. I will create I'll modify something. I'll modify new md. This is my modification. Now I can check my git status. I have a modified file, I have a new file. I'll just git add all. Status, 2 file has been staged. I'll go ahead and git commit, give a message. I'll say add new feature. Now I have created a new commit into my feature branch. If you recall the command that we learned a few minutes ago, how to check the commit history, we can use the git log to check the commit history, where now it shows me I have a new commit that is in my feature branch, and head means I'm currently at the feature latest commit. And you can see master branch, the latest commit for the master branch is one commit behind my feature branch. So in this case, it's something like I have a primary master branch, then have a feature branch. Then inside my feature branch, I have actually make one additional commit more than my master branch. So now I have added this new feature in my feature branch. What if I want to switch back to the master branch to work on something else? I can just git checkout master. Now I have switched to master branch. And magically, if I just check the files in my working directory, my new file are actually not here. My new file actually not here in my working directory, like the feature.python, and the new file I created in my feature branch is actually not in my working directory. This means actually every time when you switch branches, the Git software behind the scene actually helps you to modify your working directory. It automatically updates the working directory for you that reflects the latest commit of that particular branch that you are checking out. So in this, okay, I have covered how to create a branch, checkout branch. Okay. So let's talk more about git checkout this command. Git checkout this command can do more than just switching between branches. It can operate upon 3 distinct entities. It can check out a file, it can check out the commits, or it can check out a branch. So let me show you what if I want to check out a commit. And what does it do by checking out commit? It's actually browsing a point of time in your commit history, and you want to recover the state of that point of time. You can check, oh, how does my working directory looks like when I'm making the first commit, or what's the content initially in this new.md file or in this git ignore file when I make the first commit. So in order for me to check out a particular commit, I need to get the commit hash. So for me to do that, I will just use git log one line. Let's say I want to check out this file, this commit. So I just copy this commit. Then I'll just git checkout. So you paste the commit hash after checkout. Now, if you see your working directory, this is actually the state where your this particular commit message, this point of time in the history. But of course you can check out back to your head. Oh. Oops. If you check out master, it just go back to where your head is. Okay, now this is okay, git checkout. Just now I showed how to check out a particular commit, and that is useful when you just want to check what happened in the past. But when you want to revert to a past time in the history, that is actually has a lot more commands that you can use a lot of different versions of resetting your history, and that can be quite that's actually a lot of content that we will not cover in detail in today's workshop. But today's workshop will go through how to merge two branches. So as just now we have two branch, like feature branch and master branch. Now I just want to do a simple merge. I want to merge my new feature into my master because my new feature has been finished. I want to make it official. So in order to merge feature into my master, I have to be inside my master branch. So I'm currently at my master branch. I will just do git merge feature. So this is very straightforward merge because there's no conflict in terms of, because like when after I have branched a new feature branch, and my new feature is just doing addition to my existing master branch or doing modifications, and I haven't done any changes on my master branch, so it's not possible to create any conflicts. Revert is very different from checkout. If you want to see how revert behaves, if you want to revert a commit, it's actually not as simple as time traveling going back to that point of time. And what do I mean by that is, this is actually your timeline of projects. This is your latest commit, this is your second latest commit, this is your third latest commit. If you want to git revert this commit, it doesn't discard these three commits altogether. It doesn't bring the time back from here to here. It will git revert commit will actually only revert that particular commit you made. So since someone is asking, and I don't want people to use git revert wrongly, so I'll just quickly mention how to use git revert. So let's say I create a new I make a new change, nano new dot txt or new md. I want to make a new change and git commit am new change. Now if I check my new.md, it will have this new change. If I do the git revert, I need to get the hash, git hash first. So git log. So the hash string is actually very long. You don't need to copy the whole string. You just need to copy the first few digits, and the Git is smart enough to configure it, figure out which hash you are referring to. So you just copy, then git revert this commit particularly. So this will actually makes a commit. So this, you are making a new commit that is called revert new change, and this reverts commit. Okay, at this point, I also want to talk about how do you write a commit message. Usually when we write commit message, it's usually just one line, but there are situations where you have too many changes in this commit and you want to list down all the changes you have made in detail. So what you should do is use the first line to summarize all the changes you made in this commit, and you use a new empty line follow the first line and use the second following line to describe the details of that commit. This is not compulsory, but it's also a convention widely adopted by software engineers. And if you have multiple points in a detail, you usually use a point form. So this is the first line is your commit message summary. The second line is the empty line. The third line is your detailed commit message. So in the detailed commit message, you can have more details. This commit changes what, and this commit also creates new effect, etc. So you can have a lot of details, and this is how you write commit messages. So let's say this is my commit message, and I use save it. Just now I used the git revert to revert the new change commit, and let's see my new file, and the file I changed is new.md. Yes, my new change line is gone, but when I check git log, my new change commit is still there. It doesn't remove this commit. Instead of removing this commit, it creates another commit that is actually reverting the effect done by this commit. And if you do revert a particular commit in the past history, it will also only revert that particular change under that commit as well. It will not revert all the commits after that. So that's how the git revert behaves. But in terms of reverting your git commit, commit, I recommend you to read more about it from the Git documentation and online tutorials, because it can be a bit quite a lot of content and require some time for you to understand the behavior that different git commands will do. So we have covered git merges, a simple merge. Now we want to see how to resolve a merge conflict. In order to do that, I need to try to create a merge conflict. So let's create a new branch. Let's call it hello mod branch, and I git checkout hello mod branch. Oh, okay. And I want to do some modifications on dot git ignore. I want to basically remove this ignore line and include all the txt file backs in. So git add git commit message add hello back, then git checkout master. In this branch, I also want to do something else. I want to change git ignore as well. So git ignore. I want to delete this line as well. Then I do something like dot .txt. I just use hello.txt. Yep. And I'll commit this change. Git commit am update dot ignore. Okay, now hopefully I have made a conflict on the git ignore file. Now I'm trying to merge my branch, which is called hello mod branch. So git merge hello mod. Yeah. Now it reflects a merge conflict in git ignore, and automatic merge failed, fix conflict, and then commit the result. So what happens now is there's a conflict happens inside my git ignore, because both master branch and the hello.-mode branch has modified the git ignore file on the same line. What I need to do is to manually resolve that conflict. So in order to resolve this conflict, I need to check the git ignore file. So I just opened up the git ignore file, and we will see something like this. And you can also see from here, this is called the merge marker, a merge conflict marker. And this is just created in your file for you to remove it, for you to, as long as you see these markers in your files, that means there's a conflict and you need to choose either one of the options. This above is where your head is, your head version. This is empty, is actually where your hello.-mod version. So you have two versions of this file, which is conflicted. You want to determine which version you want to keep. So what I want to keep is the hello.txt line. And what I need to do is to remove these markers, remove this extra version, remove these markers. So we delete. Yeah. So I have removed all the markers, only keep one version of this file, and I will save this file. Now what happens now is if you use git status, you need to add this git merge to mark it as resolved. So git add dot git ignore, and now you can use git merge continue. Yeah, you are entering a git commit message. It will, actually when you do merging, you will have an automatic git commit message. If you don't want to change that, you can just save it. Yeah, the merge has been completed. The conflict has been solved. Now your Git repository is clean again. So this is just a quick demo of how to resolve a Git conflict. But in real world scenario, it will be slightly more complicated, but you'll get the hang of it after you have done a few times, just by experimenting, creating conflict by yourself, and try to resolve it by yourself. After resolving it, stage it, then continue the merge, and that would do it. Okay, so I have covered most of the content of today's workshop. Just a quick review. We have introduced Git and differentiated what's the difference between Git and GitHub, some basic shell commands, hopefully useful if you have never used shell before. It's actually not that hard. You created your first Git repository. You know how to check the status of the repository, what's the staging area, how to add files, commit, check history, remove files, use git ignore, git branch, and merge. And those are the most basic and also most frequently used commands. And 80-90% of the time, you just use these a few commands, which is not intimidating at all. And after your practice, it just comes natural to you, and it almost becomes muscle memory. So last but not least, I will just quickly show you some more things you can do with Git. So Git is not only, you can not only use it in your command line environment, you can also use it in you can use it as a graphical interface. There are GUI, graphical user interface software designed for Git, but you can also do, instead of using a GUI, you can also use shell integration or editor integration with Git. So basically what shell integration is basically what you have seen so far. So my command line actually shows my Git status, as you have seen all the way. So it's quite useful. Once you understand the concept behind it, you know what does it mean. What does it mean by master? What does it mean it has a rect merge? It tells me there's a merge conflict. When it's green, it means my commit tree is clean. If it is yellow, it means something has been changed. So all this status tells, all these colors and messages tells me the status of my current Git repository. So I don't have to run the Git status over and over again. So this improves the productivity and efficiency significantly when you working with Git. So how to do this? You can check this out. If you're a Mac user or Linux user, you can just set this up in your terminal or your shell. If you're a Windows user, you can also use your Windows subsystem Linux Windows subsystems Windows Linux subsystems. But anyway, so just a few tools that I recommend you to try it out. You can just check the link in the documentation and check how to install it. It's quite customizable. So instead of using bash shell, I recommend you use Z shell. All My Dish is a plugin for Z shell. It's also a plugin manager for Z shell. Power Level 10K is basically what this is, and supports a lot of integrations and plugins. You can figure them out by yourself. So another thing I want to talk about is editor integration. So for any mainstream IDE, integrated development environment or text editor will support somewhat Git integration or Git plugins, namely VS Code, Atom, even Vim has Git plugins. So let's say I want to open this repository in my Atom editor. I just use Atom dot. It just opens up my editor, opens up my Git repository in my editor. And what I want to show is that, remember that we have used the git ignore file to ignore certain files in the repository, and this kind of integrations is also quite comes into handy that once you ignore that file, the text editor will gray out the hidden files, that untracked files for you. So it's very obvious to you which file is being tracked, which file is not. In contrast, in the shell, you just see all the files in your working directory. You are not sure which one is being excluded, which one is included. And whenever you create a new file, it's green. It means it's a new file. Whenever you create some changes, it becomes yellow. It just shows you this file has been modified. And in Atoms, this has a Git tab. So instead of using Git status, it always shows this is your untracked files, and you can stage all of them at once. You are kind of moving the files from unstaged area to the staged area. And if you want to commit the files in the staging area, you just type your commit message here, update something. And you can also click on the stage changes to see the particular line change. You can unstage it very easily with the GUI, but it only comes into handy after you have fully understood the concept in the command line. So sometimes command line is faster, sometimes GUI is faster, but it's whichever way you prefer, you can use that way. So I can just commit to master, and yeah, it has been committed. So I can even see my Git logs here. And there's no yellow color or green color on my file directory. That's also how I know all my changes has been committed. So this is editor integration. Another thing that you can customize for yourself is the thing called Git config. Git config is basically a file that lives inside your system that is basically a setting file for your Git software. So by default, you don't have this file, and after you have setting up your credentials, it will only just store your credentials. For example, if I just see git config user.name, git config user.name, it will show my name. Git config user.email, it shows my email. So what does this do is a convenient hack to make your commit message, make a login message more readable and more colorful, basically. So let me demo this. This is just a hack that one of the hacks you can do, and I just took the reference from here. But there are much more things you can configure inside the git config file. cd intro. I'll use this repository as an example. So basically, you are making a alias, write an alias into the git config. Oops. Control C, Control V. I will just run this command. Now I will just use git log graph. Now it shows my commit graph with more color and basically more intuitive. You can see different branches, how they merge, how they are being created and fast forwarded and being merged, then branched again, merged again, something like that. Okay. Um, I have finished the content of today's workshop. I will move on to answer questions. Now you can post any questions related to Git or not related to Git, as long as I can answer. Um, but before we do that, please, I would like to ask everyone to fill in this survey. This is anonymous survey about this workshop. Just give overall rating of this workshop. So for us to improve in the future and in the following workshop, we will be conducting in the following weeks. If you have any comments, constructive suggestions, we all welcome them, so we can improve and deliver better content. Um, so thanks for everyone staying, made it to the last. Congratulations. I believe you will be able to start using Git in the future. Um, let's see what other questions we have right now. Is there a difference for the okay, one thing I can if you really want to upload your Git repository onto Dropbox, you can do something like you can use um this piece of software written by this person, uh which help you to establish a bridge between your Git and Dropbox. In only by using this way you can safely um back up your Git repository on Dropbox. Otherwise, it may cause you some trouble. Yep. Okay, I think there's no more. I think there's no more questions from the Pigeonhole. Is there any questions in the Twitch chat? Okay, yeah. Uh, our next session will be next Thursday, same time, same day. Still Thursday, same time, and same link as today's um, Twitch live. One last question in the Pigeonhole. Does Git work for non-text files version control, such as texture files for game development? Okay, Git can work. Git is best for text files, and by saying text files, I mean any text file, including .txt file, .md file, .py file, any coding script. So these are all text files, and Git is good at using the um, hash encryption to compress your text file into a hash string. But non-text files, you are referring to binary files such as pictures or just any PDF documents. This file you can still add it and commit it inside your Git repository. You can push it into GitHub, but it won't track the individual line changes inside the binary files. So it will only track, oh, there's a change in your binary file, but it doesn't tell you which line has been changed. It can tell you, oh, this binary file has been deleted, or this has been changed, or it has not been changed. It cannot tell you if which particular page has been changed, or which particular line has been changed, or it, of course, it cannot merge two binary files as well. So yes, Git you can include binary files, non-text files in your Git repository. That's fine, but it doesn't work so well with binary files. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so after this session, if you want to approach any of us, any of the TAs, you can approach them through Telegram. These are the Telegram handles. These are our contributors. If you want to reach out to me, you can follow me. You can know how to reach out to me on my GitHub page. If nothing else, I think we can conclude today's session. Feel free to message us, any of us, any questions, or email us on the following sessions. We really appreciate your attendance and also made it to the last. Thank you all.